Hi, a good day to everyone who is joining us on this webinar today on the topic of building a customer-centric company. My name is Tuan from SGInnovate. And for those who may have been joining us for the very first time, SGInnovate is a Singapore government-owned organization that invests in and helps build deep tech startups, talent, as well as a vibrant deep tech innovation economy. I am very happy to be joined here by three very diverse and experienced industry leaders on the topic today. So we have Kristen Durham, who is the VP for Startup Initiatives at Zendesk, also our organizing partner for today's event. We have Brandon Rear, who's VP of Community at Fandom, which is a very, very fun and exciting community that Brandon will be sharing about in a bit. And of course, we have Eileen, who is the APEC Business Development Global Innovation Head at 500 Startups, works very, very closely with the startups community in Singapore and many, many countries of the region. And Eileen is also an entrepreneur herself. And the reason why we are actually putting together today's event on the topic of customer experience and the importance of paying attention to the customer early on is because it is a very strong determinant of the success of the go-to market success that startups often are concerned about. So when we ask our startups recently, what will be their number one priority in the next couple of years? The unvariable answer has always been market access. And then we look deeper into that to understand from the customer's perspective, from the corporate clients and corporate VCs, as well as investor perspective. All of them share with us one common point, that when they look at working with a startup or investing in a startup, they would ask themselves the question of whether this particular startup will be able to meet market demands at scale. So that is the importance of how it is that startups should be positioning yourselves for future growth and not just paying attention to today's numbers. And that is what we hope today's event will be of value to you about. So just some housekeeping before we get started. We would have a very good sharing by Kristen and Brandon on the topic of building a customer-centric company, following which we would enter into a panel discussion involving everyone to deep dive further into the topic. I would invite all of you to also submit any questions that you may have for Eileen, Kristen, and Brandon along the way, and we will take them as we go along. With this, I would now like to invite Kristen and Brandon to get us started with today's event. Kristen and Brandon, please.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Tuan. And thank you to SGInnovate for having us here today. It's so good to be virtually with the group. I think we'd prefer to have caught a plane and joined you in Singapore. Brandon and I are both based in San Francisco, but it's such a privilege and pleasure to be here with you today. As Tuan was saying, Brandon and I kind of put our heads together and prepared a few things for you today just to get the conversation going, but we really want to make sure that we're taking your questions and providing you the sort of answers and practical advice that you need to help grow your startups in these early stages. So let me just, like I said, we prepared a few things, so I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will help us kind of talk through a little bit, a few of our ideas. But before we get into the meat of it, maybe Brandon, I'd love to ask you to just introduce yourself and Fandom a little bit more.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. My name's Brandon Ray, and as Tuan said before, I'm the VP of Community at Fandom. We're a global entertainment community platform, and we give fans the tools to explore and contribute to and celebrate the world of movies and television and anime and gaming, primarily through kind of deep lore and reference material on our wiki community platform. But we also, over the years have built out our Emmy-nominated screen Junkies video team. If you've seen the Honest trailers on YouTube, you may be familiar with them. Our subscription player services on Dungeons & Dragons Beyond in partnership with Wizards of the Coast, and most recently gaming retail through our acquisition of a company called Fanatical out of the UK. We currently have over 300 million monthly users that come and consume the content on the site over the span of 250,000 fan communities about everything you can possibly think of in the world of pop culture and beyond. You can create a wiki on kind of any topic you would like. I've been at Fandom for 11 years. I started part-time doing 10 hours a week with customer support tickets when I was in college. So this has kind of been where I've been at my whole career. I became very familiar with how Zendesk works. So that's kind of how I got connected to them and have been working with Kristen. And after college, I became a full-time community manager. Through that capacity, I've worked with colleagues in product and marketing and editorial and sales to really become familiar with all the ins and outs of how our company works. And last year, about a year ago, I became the head of our community org, which has been really fun and really exciting. I've kind of reoriented that to have a focus on data-driven community management and creator recognition, user-generated content development, trust and safety, which has been a big emerging focus for us this year, and of course, customer support. So I'm excited to get the conversation going.
Oh, thanks, Brandon. I just have to say, you know, it's an honor for me to be joined here by Brandon. I think it's a real treat for the group today. Like, you know, you have lived kind of the startup career with Fandom, like all of the growth, all of the different roles. So there couldn't be a better person to join today to talk about building a customer-centric company. I think that you guys live and breathe that every single day for your 300 million users. So incredible to be here with you. And yeah, as Brandon mentioned, he's been a part of Zendesk community. It's how I got to know him. I've been leading our startup initiatives here at Zendesk for about a year and a half now as a full-fledged program. So we work with thousands of companies, helping them get started with their customer support needs. But before that, I was working as the chief of staff here at Zendesk for 4 years, sitting alongside the founder, dealing with founder issues. Before that, working with a lot of startups through Silicon Valley Bank, helping them kind of navigate fundraising and finance. So I've been a startup junkie for a while now, and it's great to be here with you all in Singapore, chatting a little bit about our experiences and my experiences here at Zendesk. A little bit, maybe, you know, I don't want to assume, so just a little bit about Zendesk. If you haven't heard of us, we're a software company. We make software that makes customer service better. So our founders are originally from Denmark. They were tired of the old tools and the old ways of providing customer support. And they said there had to be another way. And so as entrepreneurs do, they went out and built it. And, you know, flash forward about 15 years, you know, today we have a global company, a company with offices in Singapore, lots of great R&D coming out of our offices there. And we have the pleasure and privilege of working with startups all over the world, from Zoom, which we're using right now, a very grown-up startup, to, you know, there in the region, folks like Bukalapak, Carousel, and many more. So, you know, definitely we live and breathe startups. Like I said, you know, our history has kind of been that of startups, you know, 3 guys, 1 desk in Copenhagen, raise a little bit of money, you get some users, you know, grow a little bit more. 2014, like, users are growing, employees are growing. We IPO'd, and, you know, now we're $1 billion revenue company, 4,000 employees worldwide. You know, it's a beautiful narrative, right? And I think if we sort of present the entirety of the company journey in that way, like, you know, it looks so beautiful, right? It had all of the elements of that, you know, journey that we hear about in you know, stories that founders tell one another. You bootstrap to build the product, you raise some money, achieve that hockey stick growth, become a unicorn. It was all thanks to the product and team. For anybody who's actually in the hard work of building and growing startups, you know that it's not the case. It is not that. And so often when we tell ourselves these beautiful stories, what we lose is the fact that, there were lots of ups and downs. Oftentimes, though, we lose the customer in the middle of it, and between the product ideas and those PowerPoints that you build to go raise capital, like the customer can too often get lost. And the reason that this matters is because the customer is really the first true validation that your startup has. And they're very much, the thing that turns it from a project into a real business. Brandon, as we were preparing for today, you mentioned living through a time at Fandom when the customer maybe got a little lost among your priorities. I think it was when you guys were working on some new monetization strategies. Like, share with us what happened then, and what was that period like for the team and the company?
Sure. It was really starting in, I think, 2015, probably a little more in earnest in 2016 and 17, where, this is my personal view on running a solely wiki-based business, is there's only so far you can take it because it's monetized through digital ads on the page. And eventually that, until you diversify what your offering is, and so there's other monetization opportunities, you're kind of just stuck at a certain level because all you're doing is really just squeezing.
Just have that real estate, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, we started hoping to get kind of to the next step of like, can we get acquired by another company, which we did eventually. We started focusing on things like, let's put a premium video player that auto plays, but without sound. I always feel like that makes it somehow more palatable. Put that at the top of our most high traffic wiki pages. We were branching out into editorial, and kind of at the time that really that business in digital media was starting to really get squeezed and kind of go by the wayside a little bit. We were going all in on it because we felt that if we had an editorial front page in front of this UGC website that nobody understands, well, then that's easier for clients. We'll be able to grow monetization through that way. And so many of the resources that had been dedicated to the customers on the wikis were devoted to that. And we also started focusing on kind of more lightweight contribution avenues, like a discussions product that we have versus that core wiki creation platform. And along the way, our wiki platform, because of the way that it had been built and kind of hacked and modified over the years, it got outdated and it became very difficult to upgrade. So up until just this past year, we went about 7 years on outdated MediaWiki software. And all of these things kind of contributed to the question turning from what does the customer want into what does the company want, or what does the company need, without really taking that into account. And the impact on the team, there was friction inside the company. Different teams were responsible for different aspects. Like there was editorial, there was video, there was product doing lightweight contributions, there was me and other people in community. We're all running in different directions and then fighting when we can't get on the same page. And it was just unsustainable. Fortunately, in 2018, we were acquired, or a strategic partnership between TPG Capital and media executive John Miller acquired a majority stake in Fandom. And from there, I think we kind of realized, all right, we got to where we needed to be. It gave us an opportunity to focus back on the customer again, and we've been growing in that direction ever since.
Yeah. So I think, early days, maybe some of the folks joining us today don't yet have the luxury of kind of having, these bigger grown-up problems, like different monetization, pulling them here and there. Like oftentimes when it's really early, the challenge is to just pick your head up from the product and talk to the people who are using it and understand what they need. But like, you know, we can all lose our way, right? We can all kind of sometimes miss the fact that the customer is what's giving us validation and giving us the opportunity to keep going. And so, you know, in the face of that, I think we say, you know, make your customer your priority. And I'm sure it's in the, you know, they're in your company's list of priorities. But, you know, the way you think about prioritizing the customer, how you demonstrate that in the company, that should change over time, and where they fit in your prioritization needs to change over time. And as we think about, okay, what are some of the ways in which investing in the customer really comes to life? Like how does it drive value back to your startup? What are the reasons why you should invest time in this? You know, I think that we put together our top 5 list, and we'll kind of walk you through that. But, you know, think really hard about, you know, where are you sitting today, and where do things fit in? And Brandon, you know, you've lived lots of different varieties of roles focusing on the customer. So I'll ask you to chime in on this role too, on this list too, you know. But I think the first most obvious one is, you know, you can promote long-term customer retention. So in general, you know, you're going to spend a lot of time acquiring customers. You've built a great product for them to engage with and love. But if you aren't focused on, you know, not just the product and not just getting them on board, but what are you going to do to keep them engaged and keep them really using your product over time and supporting them fully, you know, you're just kind of setting yourself up for the leaky bucket problem. And, you know, whether that leaky bucket is measured in users or measured in revenue, you know, really focusing on not just that product experience, but the customer experience will do a lot to, you know, drive lifetime value and make it, you know, make sense to keep running the business as you are. Acquisition is expensive, and you've got to give up equity to afford it. So that's the easiest dollars and cents reason to focus on experience and retention. Maybe another one, though, you know, I think it also intuitive, but a little step aside, is it establishes brand trust in the market. You know, when you're a new company, maybe known by no one, building your brand it no doubt has to be a part of your go-to-market strategy. But it's not just, you know, what you write on a press release or what you put on a website. You know, the way that you craft an experience, the way that you support your customers, that becomes your brand in the market. It's the proof point of how you show up as a company. And so, you know, in hyper competitive spaces and in areas where, you know, there's no reason necessarily for companies to give you a second look, you know, you living up every day to that brand promise, to building trust in the market through the way you support your customers, it's paramount for driving you forward. And, you know, good news is happy customers will talk to their friends. They'll promote you. They'll again drive down some of that acquisition cost while helping you grow your foothold in the market. This is one, maybe Brandon, I'll have you talk about it a little bit more. You know, shaping your product roadmap. You're definitely not going to hand the keys over to somebody else to drive your company, but your customers they're going to see a lot about your product that maybe you don't necessarily see or don't necessarily see in the right way, in the same way.
Yeah, and I think for me, what I really tried to do over this last year, especially this year, because I kind of revamped the way that we did community at Fandom, is find a data-driven approach to community, which is hard, especially when you're dealing with community management. That's kind of an art. So I'm trying to find, like, where's the science in it all too? And, you know, we're focusing on creator satisfaction, kind of measuring how our core constituency, as it were, feels at any given time. And also really having a proactive approach to going out, and this is something that you can do a little more kind of at scale. So I do have that privilege in that regard, is have the resources to go out and kind of talk directly to core customers. In our cases, it's the admins on kind of our top 1,000 to 3,000 communities, and really get that direct feedback, and then prioritize and figure out which parts are actually ones that might create a risk of losing users or losing communities, because they are allowed to take their content and go somewhere else. So I've taken this signal versus noise approach, where kind of in the past, if we got a Zendesk ticket or a user complaint or whatever it was, we'd say, hey, problem, please fix it, without kind of putting it into a proper context. So in kind of focusing on the signal and really contextualizing that for our product team and company leadership, what people are able to understand is, oh, okay, if this happens, or if we don't address this, then this community that has 50 million page views per month might pack up and leave, and then we lose that IP and we lose that ability to be in that market. So it's really, to me, about trying to find, and again, easier said than done, like an ROI to community and customer. And if you can do that, everything starts to click for the rest of the company.
Yeah. And I think that point of, not all feedback is created equal. Not all users are created equal too. So, if there's a big vociferous group on the other side using your product, you can make some good early assumptions about who matters more to listen to now, and prioritize that. But I feel that, so often the users of our product see the gaps, and they will tell us, especially the ones that really love us, they will tell us what they want next from us. And, oftentimes if we build towards that, they'll follow, which is great.
And we had a great example today in Fandom. We're redesigning our site, putting out a new skin, and we gave logged in users the ability to opt in today and start to look around. Lots of great feedback, lots of bugs that we'll be able to fix. Equally, lots of, I hate this, you suck. And that's, no, you just think it's different. So it's really putting those things into perspective.
Yeah, totally. There's always going to be a hater out there. Let's see, more reasons it should matter. In some businesses, the investments that you make in customer support experience, it'll help you identify your cross-sell opportunities. That I think we hear it oftentimes from folks who manage subscriptions, and someone calls in to cancel, and your support team actually can quickly understand their problem, figure out they're not getting the product they want, and set them down on another path that is better suited for them. So you have the opportunity to find those places to sell more and offer something different if something's just not quite a good fit. And another, I think customer experience, building customer-centric company, it can help with your recruitment and team culture. I think a lot of potential employees look very closely to see how a company treats its customers as an indication for how they would treat their employees. And I think, whether you treat your customers well, that bleeds over to employees, or vice versa. You treat your employees well, they'll treat your customers well. But, that again is a little bit of the brand promise that shows up in your ability to attract top talent to help you build this startup that you're working on. And so Tuan was telling me folks in the audience like to see numbers. So if anecdotally it's not enough for you, this is the basic math of promoting retention and why customers matter. You improve your retention rate by 5 points. That can mean 40%, 50% more revenue. It really sort of drops to the bottom line right away and continues paying dividends. Just one other nugget for everyone here. We did a benchmark report of all of our startups using Zendesk last year. What we found in that benchmark, a great statistic is that, unicorns among the fastest growing startups, they're 61% faster and more likely to add self-service as a technology when they start building an experience for their customers. So, there's a lot more research kind of underlying the reasons why you should invest in customer experience. It'll help you scale, it'll drive revenue, it'll do all of these things. Hopefully we've convinced you a bit. The reality is, and I know this is true, many of you, may not have gotten started yet. And what we also found is, as we canvass the market, is that, more than 70% of early stage startups, don't have a formal customer support strategy in place. You're doing the best you can and bringing it together. And so, I think that you're here today is a great sign. And what we want to do with the rest of the time is help you get a jump on that strategy, because you can make a lot of progress right away. And so with that, maybe let's actually get into the details of building the customer into your company's core. So the next part, as we kind of talk through some of the more practical things that we've both seen and done, we're going to organize it by kind of the stages and the number of users you have. So it's more a heuristic than something very specific, but we'll kind of talk about the 3 steps of scaling up how you think about supporting your customers. And really that first stage, when you're just getting your first, let's say 0 to 100 customers in, the name of the game at this point is just talking to your customers, using their feedback. One of the things that we so often fail to do, as we were saying, is to just reach out and talk and listen. And this is something, especially at the earliest stages of the company, even if you started hiring some more employees, this is something that you as a founder, you need to be involved in. Even if you're the technical founder, you need to be involved in this. Talking to everyone using your product will give you the kind of insight into how well your product is meeting the market and the needs of that market. It's going to be the thing that, informs you for the next step and the next step. And so, when we say talk to everyone using your product, like very literally hand out your phone number, give people your email address, if you're on your WhatsApp, like give people your number, make it very easy to reach you, because those that really believe in what you're doing and want to be helpful, like, complainers might complain if something looks a little different, but in the earliest stages, anybody who's willing to spend their time and energy to try to help you build the thing that they want to use, it's worth listening to them. It's worth hearing them out. And through that hearing, you'll learn what makes customers happy and excited, and you'll hear what makes them angry. So long as you have your ears really open and attuned to the feedback that they're providing you, then as a founder, you need to make sure it's not just a motion that you're running yourself, and this piece about amplifying the voice of your users internally. That's a critical part, so that it doesn't sit in a silo. It doesn't just sit with you as a founder. It doesn't just sit with the person who's maybe on your customer service front lines. Really, you need to look for ways that you help the entire company understand what it is that your users are telling you and sharing the experience that they're having with your product. And then finally, I would say meet every week, at least every week, to discuss what's happening with customers. So like some of the easy things that you can do, like one, as a founder, you're in these conversations, just have a running Google Doc open where you're documenting things, what you hear in the words of the customers that they're telling you, as you see a few things kind of lighting up over and over again, it's a great opportunity to maybe start a Kanban board, like, maybe you're using Trello or Jira already, just like throw that up, put it in a visible space so that others in the company can see it. And then make sure you talk about it, right? There's a lot of need for accountability early on to make sure that people are taking this feedback in and understanding it as best as they can. And Brandon, this is part of what you've lived through, all of the iterations you've been through at Fandom. But in the early days, what would you say? What were some of the things that were, maybe you saw in the founding team early on that they did well? I know that kind of having this background with Jimmy Wales and coming out of Wikipedia, there's a huge ethos around democratizing access. Like how does that ethos maybe show up in the way that you talked to and talked about your customers within the company?
It showed up immediately. I mean, like you said, Jimmy Wales his whole thing is the democratization of technology, whether it's Wikipedia, he's doing, I think it's called Wikisocial now. I hope he's not watching since I forgot the name of it, but he's tried all these different attempts of taking this wiki concept to, like, there was even one time, can you do that to a search engine? That didn't work out. But he's also gone into the democratization of news, the democratization now of social media and kind of more open source ways of doing things. So that idea was very much there from the beginning of really caring about what the core creator community said. And coming out of Wikipedia, from Fandom, we do have the benefit of being able to say, all right, this is a company. We do have the power to just make decisions. So we have to make sure we're constantly checking ourselves by bringing the community into it. But at that time, coming right out of Wikipedia, to this day, Wikipedia still has their community vote on some of the features that they built. Sometimes after they've built it, like they'll spend all this time and money and resources building a feature, and then it's up to the users to decide whether it's a good idea or not. So we were able very early on, and I wasn't there for most of this period, but it really was a period of a lot of direct interaction directly with communities, hearing feedback, and we had the benefit of MediaWiki, the software that powers us, which had been iterated on for 5 or 6 years before then, very much was built with community in mind, because it's all about community collaboration, and already had tools for moderation and socialization, all the things that you would need. So we were able to start with that foundation and kind of immediately go into a customer support strategy. I think one of our employees, who's like employee number 5, let's say, was customer support, and she's still there to this day. So we've kind of had that like legacy infused from day one.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I think it a little bit of a tangent, but that that amazing sort of beauty of employee number 5, being a customer support person. If they stay with it, like, wow, what a direct resource to your customers and facing them. So often what we've seen at Zendesk, customer support is a great place. We talked about recruiting earlier in your brand, like support is the best place to hire employees into the company that are going to deeply understand your product, deeply understand the customer and the needs and their experience with the product. And they can go out and really serve in any function in the company. It's a springboard within Zendesk to go to product, to go to customer success, to end up in sales, even all of these places where you learn the customer so deeply that you can then get out and share and demonstrate that knowledge all across the startup.
And we've seen the same thing within Fandom of people going into other areas of the company. And what's so nice about customer support too is, depending on the seniority of the role you're hiring, you may want to get somebody who has customer support Zendesk experience. But if it's like a junior employee, an associate support agent or something like that, barista at Starbucks, like that's qualification to me, because we have a service-oriented mindset. So you can kind of take somebody who's never been in this industry before, and then I've been able to see people go on these incredible journeys, and I think that's just really special to watch.
No, that is a pro tip. If you can keep your cool when somebody makes the most outrageous order at Starbucks, they're going to be great with anyone. Yeah, that's a great tip. You know, one company, at least in the US, that we saw and we've worked with here at Zendesk for a long time, you know, kind of walking the walk when it comes to engaging early and often. You know, they began providing support from their private beta mode, like way back in 2013. You know, one of the things that was great, even as the company scaled, ticket duty, like responding to the customers, was something shared across the entire company. So everyone who onboarded, they had to respond to customer outreach, and even as you continued on in the company, it was just a part of the culture that everyone, regardless of the role, needs to be talking to customers, and that, you know, that's an easy to do for anyone who's joining us today. Just like, you know, have your entire team out there and on the front lines, and if they don't know the answer, you know, they'll learn how to figure out where that answer is. So as you start growing, you know, 100 to 1,000 companies, let's say more users, more customers than you as a founder can, you know, hold in your memory or respond to on your own, then you need to start thinking about implementing systems that benefit customers, prepare you for scale. And, you know, it may sound a little off, like you're talking about building a customer-centric company, but now you're talking about tools. Like, investing in the infrastructure that's going to let you serve the customer is one of the important things that you can do to demonstrate that commitment to them. And so, you know, as it gets a little bit beyond just what you as a founder or co-founders can do within your own inbox, one of the first most important things is start connecting those customer conversations, regardless of where they begin. You know, maybe one's an email, maybe another is a WhatsApp. Start bringing them into the same central clearinghouse so you have a view on every conversation that's coming in, because now you're going to need to rely on a team to help you do better by these customers and understand, you know, beyond what your mind can hold, all of the feedback that they're providing to you. And alongside of that, you know, ramp up a help center with content. Organize the things that you know your customers are going to want to know about your product, about how you sell it. This is a great way to introduce scale, but it also, you know, it demonstrates that you're thinking with the customer first. You're thinking about, you know, what is their experience going to be? What are the needs that they have? And you're taking all of the friction out of them finding those answers to the most, you know, basic and straightforward questions that they're going to have. And then finally, you know, on this technology front, it's important to start connecting your stack of critical business applications, so you have that one clear view of the customer. And oftentimes it's most obvious to, you know, to kind of build your CRM components together, where you have sales automation and marketing and customer support together. But it's important to also tie in what you use for product management, whether that's, you know, Jira or GitHub. Like, make it easy to take a customer issue and publish it to the product teams. If you're selling in an e-commerce environment, you know, finding tools that integrate with a platform like Shopify or Tmall, you know, finding the ways to pull those together is incredibly important. If you use Slack, you know, another great tool for just ensuring that you have systems that are united in there to help your teams better and more effectively help your customers. Brandon, I know you guys have gone through a lot of infrastructure choices. Maybe if you were to share, like, the things that were built a long time ago that still serve you today, like what are the one or two things that you would say have been most important for fandom, you know, kind of creating that infrastructure that scaled with you and with your customers?
I think internally, certainly a Jira Kanban board has been a big one. I think we certainly, in this period of the company, scaled out you know, how we do a help center, a support center. I would say this is the stage where we started using Zendesk, so that gave us more tools at our disposal to be able to support communities. And then, you know, for user-facing things, in terms of like hearing their feedback, you know, MediaWiki has some great moderation tools in it, but they were telling us that as we were growing in scale so significantly, that there was more that was needed, that there was more vandalism that was happening on the site. We were attracting spammers. There were people who would say horrific things that, you know, users obviously don't want to see. So one of the things that we built was a much more robust moderation and kind of banning system, both for certain content and then making it easier to kind of globally ban users if they end up being a vandal or if they're spamming around. And it's pretty powerful, and it generally keeps people out, and we're able to prevent racial slurs or other horrible things from being posted on the site to begin with through this system. And I think moderation's a good one, because not everybody obviously has a community platform, but a lot of companies, whether they're community-based or if they're selling a product, also use social media. And I saw a post in a Facebook group recently about how a company didn't want to invest in the moderation of their social media pages until a social space like Facebook started driving more meaningful conversion for their website. And the post was saying, how do I convince, you know, the company of an ROI around this? And what I said is, and you were kind of talking about this before, Kristen, was connected to the brand. And if your revenue is from advertising, like mine is, you can also connect it to safety assurances for advertisers, because they're always looking for that sort of thing. You know, it doesn't take large scale conversion or high traffic for a brand to be pegged as being unsafe or toxic based on what's going on their Facebook page if that's not being cleaned up. So if you invest, you know, I'm a big believer in this idea of safety by design, like starting with these tools. So if you invest in that, it may cost more upfront, but to me, it's a requirement for having an early social media presence, protecting your brand, and having advertisers being willing to connect their brands to yours. All it takes is one bad day to tarnish your company's image or your website's image. So kind of upfront investment and safety helps prevent that. And that was really our focus throughout that period of the company.
Oh, thanks.
And Brandon, I think the conversation has been going so well that we are having some really good questions from the audience at the same time. So Kristen, Brandon, if I could trouble you to help us close this in the next couple of minutes so that we could have the right amount of time spent to address some of these questions coming on forward, if that's possible. Thank you both.
Yeah, no, you've got it, Tuan. I should give everybody else a chance to ask questions of Brandon. So we'll kind of buzz through this. We can share some of the additional customer stories later. You know, kind of after you get past that 1,000 customer hurdle or whatever it is, you know, you're talking to your customers, you're building the systems. Then it's really about thinking about how you build and invest in your team. And that means, you know, doing things, creating process, using tools to drive productivity for them. So often, you know, that comes down to how you can begin segmenting users, segmenting the issues, like making it easy for your team to organize and understand and share that feedback up and out through the organization is a big part of it. You know, setting clear measurement and performance expectations, you know, looking for insights in there. You know, oftentimes that means establishing some KPIs, some SLAs, some support level agreements around, like, how are we going to support our customers? Are we meeting those or not? You know, super important for your team to understand what are the expectations for how we're going to treat the customer and give them the visibility into whether or not you're meeting those expectations. And then when it comes to, you know, making investments in building the team, we always kind of go back to encouraging people to practice empathy. You know, your employees will only treat your customers as good as they're being treated. And so, you know, we do a lot within our company to encourage like a service-oriented mindset, volunteering within the communities where we are. That may look different for your startup, but figuring out how you connect you know, a customer-centric approach to the way that you work with one another can be just really, really critical to setting everyone down the right path for cycles to come. And so with that, I'll skip our other quick thing. And then finally, the most important thing is accountability and setting that periodic inventory. So, you build the plan, you execute on the plan, what you have to do. It's critical to review your KPIs. How are you doing? What are you seeing from the front lines? 2, regularly experience different parts of your customer journey. Like, don't just trust that things are happening, validate, verify, start a trial, whatever that means. Review your product related communications as if you were a customer, share highs and lows, and most importantly, model good behavior, and do it again and do it again and do it again. Because especially in Asia, your customers here, their expectations are higher than anywhere else in the world. 83% will leave you after a couple of bad experiences. Almost 75%, almost 3/4 have moved to messaging. Like, they want to talk to you all the time. And the people supporting your customers are doing it across a lot of channels. So this is a market where it's extremely important to be out there and to be talking with your customers, and they have high expectations of you. We're here to help should you want any help with that. Zendesk has a program for startups, and we can share more about that later. But definitely, the investments that you make, we believe that they'll pay dividends. And so we're here to help you and recognize that journey. And so with that, Tuan, I promise I'll hand it back over to you, and we'll take some of your questions and some questions from the audience. But thank you for having us here.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristen and Brandon. This is a most timely conversation for sure, because we see more and more unicorns emerging from Singapore and Asia Pacific. And from what you have shared, there is a very strong correlation between having an early stage focus on the customer to the future success of such unicorns. And I think I would like to now welcome Yiling to our panel discussion as well. Yiling works a lot with startups in the region, and I would like to just invite Yiling to introduce your work at 500 Startups Global Innovation, and also to share your perspectives on the importance of paying attention to the customer, especially at the early stage, following what Kristen and Brandon have just shared. Yiling, please.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tuan. So hi, everyone. My name is Yiling Lim. I'm the head of APAC Business Development at 500 Startups Global Innovation. So what we do at 500 Startups, apart from investing in startups, of course, which I think many of you are familiar with, is our goal is ultimately to build thriving ecosystems that create new economic value and that drive sustainable growth and development. So what does that mean? My team actually partners a lot with governments and corporates to help them not only create the strategy for innovation and ecosystem building, but also develop those capabilities to implement the vision for innovation. So we run startup programs jointly with a lot of the governments in the region and globally. We also work a lot with corporates who are either looking to partner with startups or looking to build their own innovation capabilities internally. So to the point on importance of customer centricity, right? I think 100% key. You guys pretty much know that. That's why you're listening into this session right now. But why do I say that's key, right? I think with digital connectivity, the consumers of today have accessibility unlike anything before. So they can access goods, services with similar functionality at any price point. So what's left to differentiate business is really what is your unique selling proposition and how do you define that and find that out? It's really down to understanding how do I create the right customer experience and how do I create the right brand proposition and aligned brand proposition? So I saw a question in the Q&A asking, does this only apply to B2C businesses? No, absolutely not. It really applies to B2B businesses too. And I'll share 2 perspectives from that. The first one is, if you think of a B2B business, let's say you're a cloud messaging service, for example, even though you're selling it to a business, the end user is still an individual. You're still identifying individuals within the business who you need to sell to. And that's why you need to know this particular user. What are their pain points? What is their jobs to be done? You can only understand that by interviewing them, by speaking with them. I'll give you another example. I'm in a consulting business, right? So my clients are governments, are corporates. They are businesses. However, I need to understand the decision makers, and decision makers at the CEO level, at the business unit level, at the end innovation team level as well. What are their individual KPIs? How is success measured for them? And then I need to tailor my offering according to what they actually need, right? Even though my end payer is the business ultimately. So I think things to bear in mind is ultimately consumers, customer behaviors are changing. Successful innovation can only happen when you're keeping an eye out on new consumer value, new consumption behaviors. And just to round it up, before I hand it back to Tuan, as a business itself, it doesn't just apply to small businesses. We talk a lot about customer support here, but it applies to big businesses too, because the world is changing. In order for your business to still be applicable and relevant and thriving 10 years from now, you need to keep a pulse on the customers. So insurers, financial institutions today, they are rethinking about their customer lives. What are the decision points within their customers' life, and how they, as a financial institution, can grow with them and serve them better. So if you think of it traditionally, a bank, they think about fintech solutions. Now they are looking at healthcare, wellness, education, any touch points in our lives. Telcos, traditionally, they are thinking 5G, how can I best showcase my 5G technology? Nowadays, they are looking at their subscribers. Are they the younger generation, older generation? What does the younger generation need? The younger generation, are they looking into gaming? Are they looking into creators economy? Are they looking at pet ownership, for example? And that's how the telco then evolves according to what the consumer's needs are. And with that, I think you've heard it from me clearly. 100% customer centricity and having the customer at heart is key.
Thank you, Yiling. You helped to also set the stage for our next couple of discussion points, as brought up by our members of the audience as well. So all of us here are on the same page that customer centricity is of utmost importance, right? And many a times I notice that our startups with whom we talk to often come to us with a product in mind, and they want to push that product to the market. Whereas, on the other hand, if you're paying attention to the customer, you should take it from the other way around, right? Listening to what they want and build something that they are demanding. So there is a very good question from a friend of SGInnovate, Eddie Chin. He's asking, how often do you see companies, whether startups or businesses, actually integrating the voice of the customer into the products that these companies are building? Do you have some, I think Brandon, you share a little bit about that from the growth journey of Fandom, but Yiling, you worked a lot with stakeholders in the region, and Kristen, you work with so many startups across the world as well. Could I invite Yiling and Kristen to get us started on this?
Sure, I'll say really quickly, Eddie, don't get too fancy with it. You know, I think we talk about voice of the customer sometimes, and it becomes like this big project that kind of happens out on the side of the company. Like if you're an early stage company, the voice of the customer just needs to be call up a customer, have them come to a team meeting, have them directly tell you things that are there. I think if you have, support tools, something like that consolidates all of your inbound communications with customers, you can look for keywords through that, but don't make it too complex. The important thing is just bring customers forward. So, we would, and I think a lot of startups we talk to, they'll bring a customer in to kind of interview, talk at a team meeting or something once every couple of months, so that you kind of ground truth it there, and then, kind of take what you can out of your bigger systems and look for the insights there as well. But just don't overthink it, I'd say, is the important thing.
I think on the other hand, what I see with a lot of startups here and a lot of businesses here is that it's not done enough. There are just way too many startups that I mentor and judge and all, and they really haven't done a lot of market research, whether it's generative research or evaluative research. And I've been trying to get down to the root of it. And I think fundamentally, culturally as well in Asia, we tend to be a little bit more hesitant about getting feedback, a little bit more afraid of hearing things that we don't want to hear, even if we know it's important. So ultimately, when we run programs with startups and with businesses as well, we always drill into them that it's really very important to pay a huge focus on customer discovery and market experimentation. Before you do that, don't even bother with building up whatever MVPs that you need. It's better to do that little trial and experiment and quickly realize it doesn't work rather than spend 5 years and millions of dollars building it out. I recently just worked with another corporate who spent almost $1 million building a landing page and testing it out without actually speaking to any single end user just yet. So ultimately, I think it's not done enough. If you ask me, I still see a lot of founders who are hesitant to do it, and I would highly encourage anyone who is looking to launch a new product, and even if you really have an idea, to just test it out first, do all your customer research. There's a ton of experiments you can run. If you look online, there's like Picnic in the Graveyard, Wizard of Oz, all those different experiments. You can just pick, and echoing what Kristen said, don't have to overthink it. Just pick one, run with it, pick another, try it, look at the data, and then iterate.
Thank you, Yiling. And on the point of looking at the data, I think, Brandon, before the session started, you talked about how Fandom is actually also using data to help better meet the needs of your 300 million user community globally. Could you share with us about the importance of data and how Fandom has actually been making use of that?
Sure. I mean, especially once you start to get further into this kind of company life cycle that Kristen was talking about, and you start to have some scale, like we were able to see very clearly the different patterns of what people are doing on the site, so we can kind of understand the different use cases that people may have, and start to segment out different types of customers and what they do. And there's also some qualitative user research that goes into that. And I think qualitative data is equally important, especially when talking to customers, as quantitative data, because kind of to the point about the product teams wanting to just push out products and not really understanding the customers. I think it's equally also valid to say that the customers also aren't product managers and may not have landed on exactly the right solution. So when you start to go into that qualitative data and you're able to do user research and understand the different segments of people who are talking about it, you can find out what the exact pain points are and then create a solution based around that. So that's become a big part of my strategy at Fandom.
Yep, thank you very much, Brandon. I think we at SGInnovate and a lot of ecosystem builders in Singapore could actually take a learning point from that. Now, I would like to combine a couple of questions from the audience into our next discussion point. So, Kristen, you have shared about the importance of technology-enabled platforms for startups and companies to actually better manage their customer and to engage with the customer. The couple of questions that we have received from the audience actually talk about non-technology factors as well. For example, how human-centric design could come into play when we implement these technology platforms, how cultural factors would come into play. So for example, certain B2B customers may not like the idea of having an automated self-help as much as other customers. And also we talk about whether some small businesses would have an entirely strategy to manage their loyal but small base of customers rather than scaling up. So the question that I would like to hear from all of you, and perhaps I would like to start with Kristen, is how have you seen technology making sure how have you enabled technology to actually also meet the needs of the customers and differentiating the cultural aspects of geographies that you serve at the moment?
Yeah, so I think, one really important, we could go a lot of different ways. Like one really important thing to think about when you think about your customer, the market that you're operating in is, what are the ways they're most commonly wanting to communicate with other businesses, with their friends, with their families, and use that as the starting point for how you think about the ways that they may want to communicate with you. So, sometimes we may orient ourselves towards like we're just gonna put a contact form at the website and, you know, hope nobody uses it and we never hear from them, and that means there won't be any bad feedback. Like, that is not the right way to go. You know, a customer that wants to tell you something, if you don't provide them an easy channel for it, they're gonna go to a public channel and they will find you. So, you know, I think really tuning into, okay, what are these customers using regularly? How close to like their expectations for reaching us over line or WhatsApp can we get, can we staff, and then, you know, build towards that with, you know, a good experience in mind. The easiest thing to say is like, if you as a founder wouldn't put up with X, you know, wouldn't put up with a bot trying to solve your question and failing 3 times, then don't deploy the bot. If you wouldn't put up with sending an email and waiting 3 days for a response, you can't do that to your customers. So like, you are a really good first straw person for what you should think about in terms of especially that communication channel selection.
And Yiling, having worked with so many Asian partners who are big on cultures, how do you see this factor in the customer centricity?
Yeah. So not to put a spanner in Zendesk, but I think that there's actually room for a Zendesk equivalent that is much more localized as well. I think I've spoken to a lot of startups here who originally also hesitated on onboarding customer service tools like Zendesk, Intercom and whatnot, for the simple fact that they believe that in Asia, for example, in Southeast Asia, things like Line and WhatsApp rules. I think there's a way to integrate that, and one platform that's going to win is the one that can take into consideration the local needs and local nuances. So for example, if you're in Thailand, is it Line? Or in Korea, how do you integrate with KakaoTalk? Because all the relationships and the communication does happen a lot on WhatsApp. But I think that's also detracting us from the question around the difference between prioritizing speaking to customers and how we do it itself. What we've been talking about right now is just the tools, right? The tools can be different, and don't overthink that. If WhatsApp works for you, create a bot, right? Or nowadays you can even embed that WhatsApp tool on your website itself, where they click, it pops out the API, takes you direct to communicate with your customers, or your customers can reach you directly on WhatsApp with a business account. Try that out if you think that, you know, something like Intercom wouldn't work or a contact form wouldn't work. The priority though is getting the right mindset. What Kristen was saying, that I am here and I'm ready and I'm here to listen to you and to help you and to serve you. How I do that is just a matter of the tools and the platforms that I use. And to that note, then yes, do take a look at what works and what makes the most sense in your local market. How do people like to communicate?
Brandon, would you like to add anything to this thread of conversation?
I think that about covers it. I mean, I know our experiences, I personally don't have a ton of experience working with Asian businesses. We've largely been focused more on the United States. So yeah, I think the points that have been raised have been really interesting.
Perfect. And having discussed everything that we have, it remains that more than 70% of the companies, according to what Kristen was sharing, may not have in place a strategy or some level of thinking on customer experience just yet. I want to make this last question something actionable for our members of the audience. So from your perspective, if they are a startup in their early stage of development, what is something or a couple of things that they could do in the next couple of months or the next year to start getting this done? Kristen, could I invite you to get us started on this?
Yeah, no, I think kind of the important things for the strategy, you know, one, define what that ideal customer journey is going to look like around a few paths. So one is somebody who hasn't yet made a buying decision, and maybe one is for somebody who's already a customer. Like, know how you want to bring them through a journey and have a good shared understanding with the company around what that experience should look like. after you kind of have that mapped out, and it doesn't need to be super sophisticated, but know those keystone moments in the relationship that are going to either make them a big fan or make them possibly leave you. So that's one. Then maybe because I come from a software company, I think about the world and tools, but you're going to need tools to help you bring these things together. Organizing your communication channels, like creating that customer record. It's important that you put some technical infrastructure in place that's going to enable that as a part of the strategy too. And then, set a few metrics that you can at least start with and trying to say, like, the thing that we're going to prioritize is speed, because we're a B2C use case, and that's what's most important here. Or, if you're selling to companies, they want, they want something solved perfectly in the first time that you engage them. And so you anchor on that, but, kind of define those couple of journeys, put some tools in place that are going to help you execute and manage around and measure around them, and set a couple of goals, and you'll be on your way to having kind of that core strategy in place.
Yep, thank you very much, Kristen. And Yiling, you're an entrepreneur yourself. I'm sure you'll be able to offer that perspective too.
Yeah, I think I actually echo a lot of things that Kristen said, which is, as a founder, if there's one thing that if right now I ask you, who is your ideal customer profile? Who are your different customer personas? And if you can't yet create that one page, and you can get all these tools online, right? HubSpot has a great framework as well. If you cannot actually map that out, and if you are already in operations for a couple of years, but do not yet know your R funnel, so your AARR funnel, your acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue, what are your data at every step of that way? And why do people fall out? Why do people get retained? If you still don't know that, that's one place that you kind of need to go back and look. And a lot of times founders think that I have progressed so many years. Does it really make sense for me to, this sounds so fundamental, right? Are you asking me to go back to step 0? But the truth is, sometimes the hard truth needs to be told. And if you don't yet know what it is, please go back, because otherwise you won't be able to scale, whether locally or into new countries. So I would just urge everyone to always rethink. One of my favorite books right now is called Think Again by Adam Grant. Highly recommend it to everyone, to always rethink your current assumptions and be comfortable with challenging that.
Perfect. Thanks, Yiling. And my favorite book right now is Ride of a Lifetime by Walt Disney's former CEO. He talks a lot about the importance of customer happiness as well. It's great to read at the moment. And Brandon, even though there are two ladies on the panel, you have the privilege to close us off with your parting thoughts.
Sure. I mean, it's, mentioning Bob Iger's book, I think is very much in kind of bread and butter for what we do. For me, it's really about finding the ROI of customer support or community management or whatever it may be. And that's going to be different for every company, different for every customer journey. But it's so important because from company to company, the reason why we're all here talking today is that there's skepticism about it. People don't really understand it. So where I was able to start to get a lot more success was when I kind of defined the role of my department as being, we support the creator community primarily. They're the ones who create the content, which is then monetized and consumed by the broader fan base, which generates the revenue, which we're then able to reinvest back into more tools for the creator and the consumer at large. So when we kind of positioned ourselves as we're the ones who unlock the gatekeepers, like the admins, these kings of the kingdom, then it became so much clearer to people. And I think by framing around saying, we're going to make sure we unlock higher levels of discovery or engagements with different products through the community, it took sort of what our normal way of thinking is, which would be, how do we make the users successful, which is incredibly important, but reframed it for an internal audience around, how do we make the user successful and then make you successful in what you want to do with these products at the same time? It's easier said than done, and we'll take a lot of thought and really thinking about how it makes sense with your brand and your product. But once you have something that clicks with people internally, your job will become so much easier in customer support or community.
Thank you very much, Brandon. And I would like to just close our conversation off, but with this thought that in our conversation as an investor and ecosystem builder working with the startups community in Singapore and Asia Pacific, we also realize that there are a lot of worries that startups, especially at the early stage, need to think about, from building their product, attracting talent at the early stage, getting investments on board, and so on. And as we talk a lot more in depth with these startups, as well as investors and corporate clients of these startups, we realize that having a strong customer base, as well as the ability to actually meet the needs of these customers, would be the horizontal factor that would help with everything else. Like what Kristen, you were sharing about how customer experience could actually help with recruitment as well, when people see how the company culture is being built at this point in time. So on behalf of our audience, I think a lot of them have been sending in a lot of good thank you messages and requesting for the materials being shared today. I want to thank Eileen, Kristen, and Brandon for making time to join us and for sharing your perspectives on the subject with our audience today. And likewise, on behalf of our speakers today, I want to thank everyone. We've got more than 100 unique viewers who tuned into the event this morning, and especially to the 60 or so people who stay on, even though we are well past the event time, which is testimony to the level of engagement that we have had today. So I think we did a good job in engaging with our customer today as well. We will be sending out a post-event email to everyone, including the link to the event recording after this. So with that, I would like to close the event and have a good day, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, Tuan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.